Good morning to those in the West Coast and good afternoon to those on the East Coast. My name is Stephen Joseph, and I am the author of the just released Cranky Superpowers Life Lessons Learned from the Common Crankosaurus Chronicles. This is a follow-up to my 2020 book, A Grown-Up Guide to Effective Crankiness, the Crankosaurus Method. I'm also the author of the children's book Snoodle series with the second Snoodles book titled Snoodles in Space, a Snoodle, a Zoodles, Cadoodles, and One Happy Schmoodle that was released this past April. And good news for all those Snoodle fans watching, the third Snoodle book should be out early next year. It is an absolute honor to be given this task of giving the keynote address. I see myself having three jobs today. First, many people who signed on today for this fabulous BookFest are people just like me with the thought, can I really write a book? The answer, of course, is yes. And I, along with the wonderful authors you will see today and tomorrow, will inspire all of you to take the next step on this journey. Second, I'm presenting myself here today not only as a cranky expert, but the preeminent cranky expert in the entire cranky field. I am sure all of you have come across a crankster or two along the way, and I'm here to tell you that I happen to be the top crankster. Last, since I've written a book on cranky superpowers, you probably want to know a thing or two about cranky superpowers, and I am here to tell you. So, I could start with my own personal cranky superpower story. I was not planning on writing a book, let alone 6 books. I was and I still am an officer in the company, and my company has been bought a couple of times by other companies. The first time was back in 2015, exactly. And after they bought the company, they sent all of the officers to participate in a leadership assessment program. They bought the car and they were looking under the hood. This was a program which essentially had to spend 16 hours over a 2-day period trying to run a company from a laptop as if you're playing both a video game and working a pinball machine at the exact same time, at the end of which, of course, you'll become a pinball. We were told that this was a well thought out program developed by notable psychologists, and they have used these assessments to identify leaders of the business world. I was excited to do this because I wanted to be a leader in the business world, not that I really knew what that looked like, but also because they sent me out to a castle in England, about an hour outside of London. And who doesn't like going to castles? I survived the 2 days. While dealing with the jet lag and staring at a computer for 16 hours was not fun, what turned out to be even more difficult was to get the findings. They determined on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, and that 1 was the lowest. I was only a 1 when they measured my level of energy. Again, on a scale of 1 to 10, I also scored a 1 when it was assessing my level of creativity. In other words, I was not even a couch potato. I was a potato that could not make the couch. I could not think outside the box, and I was not able to do much better inside the box either. However, with results like these, it was inside the box that they believed where I belonged. And with the results, I did get a box brochure, and it even came with a 10% discount. Nobody at the nursing home facility where I was living at the time ever told me about my low energy and low creativity. But now this gave me something to prove. Maybe I could get to a 2 and be placed in assisted living. I had heard that they had some good activities there. Maybe I could even get to a 4 and move to independent living. Then I could even get my own kitchen. Yes, you are probably saying, wow, you can't make that stuff up. And yes, I did not. Well, the nursing home part, that's the only part of the story that's made up. However, I do have a chapter in my book, Can't Make It Up, Crankosaurus, that points out that it's really the exact opposite when you think about things that you can't make that stuff up. I refer to a family, the mother packing boxes at Amazon, the father delivers the boxes she had packed, and they have the same routine day after day after day. And it's more like the rut we get into, that we really get into that can't make it up stuff, Crankosaurus. So it is important as a cranky superpower to use our creativity we may have to maybe make something up. I refer to Laura Esquivel. She's an author and she wrote the book Like Water for Chocolate. And she says each of us is born with a box of matches inside us. The matches we light is our cranky superpower. The book Cranky Superpowers is not a self-help book. Rather, I call it a help yourself book. I do not like the term self-help. It sounds passive, like self-serve ice cream. The machine serves the ice cream, and you do not make the ice cream. This book is about making ice cream. I also dedicated this book to Elena Tarica. She was my partner for 20 years, and she had passed away during Passover in April 2022 after a battle with ALS. And I mention this because Elena, who grew up with juvenile arthritis, was always a person who was never about freedom from, but freedom to. I bring this up because it was during Passover, and we talk about the celebration of being free from slavery in Egypt. But the important lesson that's being lost in that is that if you're in the desert for 40 years, what is important is not the freedom from, it's really the freedom to. And that is what Cranky Superpowers is all about. The characters discover their own freedom to. This is a freedom to book. It's not about good habits. And while these self-help books talk about developing good habits, I talk about discovering new normals. I always talk about habits being temporary. It's like finding a parking spot with alternate side parking. Eventually, you have to move the car. Normals are permanent, and you are building a house. So now we get to the question, what makes me the preeminent cranky expert? Do I have a special degree? Did I get some particular training? Is there a school for this? Yes, I am a lawyer and I went to law school. You may think that we spent our days in law school learning about contracts, constitutional law, legal stuff and legalese. But in truth, there's a particular training and it's broken down into the 3 years of law school. The first year, the only thing they teach you is how to get on people's nerves. Once you learn that, in the second year, you are taught how to rub people the wrong way. In the third year, it gets more advanced and you practice how to get underneath people's skin. When you graduate, you could then do all 3 things at exactly the same time. If you always wondered why people can't stand lawyers, now you have your answer. Because I am fully trained and surrounded myself with people who are similarly trained in this field, I have learned a thing or two about crankiness. The second thing that makes me unique in this field is that I come from the Bronx. Immediately it is a special place because of the in the title. We do not go to the London or to the Paris, just like you cannot go to Bronx. You can only go to the Bronx. There are four other places in the entire world that have a the in their title. The Amazon, the Azores, the Galapagos Islands, and the Vatican. I've not been to any of those places, but I'm guessing the reason that you get a the in a particular location is because there are animal species living there that you perhaps cannot find anywhere else in the world. The people of the Bronx are tough people. When I grew up, once a year, 60,000 people would gather at a stadium in the South Bronx for an event called Bat Day. Somebody really smart thought it would be a good idea to hand out 60,000 weapons to a large group of people in the South Bronx in an enclosed location, most of whom were quite inebriated, which I had deciphered from looking at the long lines to the bathroom. Also, you should know that nobody ever cut the line when you have everybody holding a bat in one hand and a beer in the other. Years later, they replaced Bat Day with Bobblehead Night. That is a night when they give you a head and you get to watch it bobble. I could tell you that those people in the Bronx who would want to cause physical harm can do far worse damage with a bobblehead than with a baseball bat. In fact, if you stare at a bobblehead long enough, you can find yourself becoming quite cranky and may even think about the physical damage you may want to inflict on even some innocent bystander. The thing about growing up in the Bronx is that we never like to say all the time about it. We like to say, we like to say all the time about exactly how much nerve the other guy has. You know, you have a lot of nerve, or you have some nerve showing up like this, or you know what that guy's problem is? He just doesn't have any nerve. And the thing about being Jewish growing up in the Bronx is that you can have both a lot of nerve and no nerve at exactly the same time. The Jewish word for nerve is chutzpah with a ch. Jewish mothers were all given the very important job to tell the members of the family how much chutzpah that they had or did not have. So it would be a common complaint that a Jewish mother would make to her son. You know, Squiggy, your problem is that you have no chutzpah. Your father has chutzpah. Your brother has chutzpah. All your friends have chutzpah. Even your little sister has more chutzpah than you. The son would shout back with, Ma, can you please get off my freaking back with your chutzpah speech? Of course, you cannot speak to your mother like that. Hey, watch your mouth. Don't be so chutzpahdik with me. See what I mean? In the Bronx, when I grew up, the toughest gang was run by Billy the Boss Bugsy. He had a top enforcer named Fatty Patty Melt. One day, Fatty Patty Melt told the big boss that he could no longer be the top enforcer. Fatty Patty Melt explained that his nerves were completely shot. A few weeks later, Fatty Patty Melt was nowhere to be found. Little Louie came into the boss's office and asked what happened to Fatty Patty Melt. The boss explained. He told me that his nerves were all shot and could no longer be my top enforcer. That started to get on my nerves. Then he started to rub me the wrong way. If I kept him around any longer, he would start to get under my skin. Louis shot back. Oh, boss, you definitely do not want to get Fatty Patty Melt underneath your skin. So what did you do with Fatty Patty Melt? The boss explained. Yeah, let's just say may Fatty Patty melt in pieces. Louis looked down. He took off his hat. No, may Fatty Patty melt in peace. I have many different and very unique characters in my book, and even I have trouble picking out my favorites. But there's one character I like to talk about today, and his name is Mr. Schlemiel. I bring him up because even the Schlemiel can find cranky superpowers. I have one chapter titled First Rodeo Crankosaurus, and I always found it interesting that other people who have never been to rodeo like to brag, hey, this ain't my first rodeo. They know nothing about the rodeo, and they haven't been to 1,000 miles to the closest rodeo. Lawyers like to say it, doctors like to say it, especially when they're about to do that heart transplant operation on you. Of course, the rodeo may not be the image I want a doctor to have when he's about to give me a new heart. I also find it interesting that we never say the same thing about the circus. Hey, what are you doing this weekend? Well, I have to take the kids to the circus. Oh, you do not seem too excited. How come? The response always is, this ain't my first circus. Mr. Schlemiel had bought a chicken farm, but unfortunately the chicken farm had no chickens. The chickens had all crossed the road to get to the other side. Why did the chickens all cross the road to get to the other side? The grass is always greener on the other side of the road. Needing to earn some income, luck would have it that a rodeo came to town, and they put up a sign that said, First rodeo competition, $500 to the winner. Mr. Schlemiel thought to himself that this would be a great way to earn some money. Mr. Schlemiel was put on the most tame little pony and immediately fell off. Despite that, week after week, he would enter the second, the third, the fourth, and ultimately the 10th rodeo competition. Each rodeo competition was more difficult than the one before. Of course, by the 10th rodeo, Mr. Schlemiel had 2 broken legs, 2 broken arms, a concussion, and 10 teeth knocked out of his mouth. They even had to wheel him and pick him up to get on the ride of the bull. That was the most dangerous bull in the whole rodeo. How tough was this bull, you may ask? Well, the most experienced cowboy and bull rider was not able to last 10 seconds with this bull. But Mr. Schlemiel rode the bull for 1 minute, then 2, then 3. Finally, after 10 minutes, The bull was so exhausted trying to throw Mr. Schlemiel off, it just lay down and fell asleep. Everyone was watching in amazement, and they asked Mr. Schlemiel how he did it. He responded, this ain't my first rodeo. I'd like to finish my presentation on talking about how cranky superpowers is also how we get along with each other. My parents were married 60 years, never had a fight. There's crazy, but no fight. The interesting thing about this was that my father met my mother on a blind date, first date with my mom, and bought her a cup of coffee for 5 cents at the Horn and Hearted and asked her to marry him. And years later, I asked my mother, how could you have said yes to dad to marry you when you didn't even know him? And she just looked at me. She replied, he looked like a hard worker. So learning from my parents, we have a rule in my relationship with my wife. We both get to be 5% insane, 20% crazy, but we were required to be 75% normal. Now, you may start to do the math and figure out that it adds up to 73 crazy days in an entire year. And you may think this is very crazy, if not an absolutely insane suggestion. However, it is counterintuitive and it all works out. Think about this. If I gave you only 0% crazy, which means that you are not permitted to be crazy at all when you do actually become crazy, and we all become crazy. You can't admit to being crazy, but you have to turn around and tell me that I am the one that's really crazy. That, of course, makes me crazy. Who likes to be told that they're crazy by a crazy person? I am now thinking that my partner has become insane, which happens in a situation like this. And then we get into one big insane argument, and she succeeds in making me completely lose my mind, and I immediately go insane. The lesson here is by giving permission to be crazy, you end up getting way less crazy from each other and even appreciate the freedom to be crazy every so often. And I could tell you with this 25 to 75% rule, we end up using maybe 1 to 2% crazy in a year. In fact, when I'm going to leave you with this thought, when you think for a moment about all the polarization we do to each other in this crazy world that we live in, if we all allow each other just a tiny bit of crazy once in a while, that could actually be our collective cranky superpower. And I thank you very much for listening, watching, enjoy the book fest. And it was great talking this morning. Thank you.